Why is form important? It may seem that injury is the only concern, but form also affects how efficient and how effective your entire workout is in getting the results that you want. When you use poor form for any exercise, you put your entire body at risk, especially the health of your connective tissue in and around your joints and muscles. So if your body isn't in the correct alignment as you put it through the stress of a workout, you can seriously harm yourself sooner or later, which outweighs any possible benefits you're hoping to gain. Another thing to keep in mind is that bad form causes your body to compensate by using muscles in a way that's not meant for that movement or to support that awkward stance or postural habit. Because of this, you won't be training quality movement patterns or targeting the muscle groups that you are actually trying to build. So the better your form, the more precise your training effect will be. Proper form supports proper breathing. Good form allows for your body to be in the correct position to breathe fuller, to get better oxygen utilization, which will help give you more power and stamina that you can have to perform your best. And when you use the correct breathing mechanics and tempo, it allows you to have better core stabilization to hold the right positioning for the exercise. What can you do to improve your form? Now that you know all the reasons why bad form is dangerous, here's how to take the first steps towards learning and practicing good form for yourself. Watch my videos. Educate yourself before you begin. Believe it or not, being an athlete does involve study and research. It's a bad idea to dive into any new exercise or workout routine without first using all your resources to learn how to correctly execute that movement. Shoulder blades back and down. This is applicable for almost every movement pattern because this action engages muscles involved in stabilizing your spine in a neutral position, which is the safest for all weight-bearing exercises. This is applicable for almost every movement pattern because this action engages muscles involved in stabilizing your spine in a neutral position, which is the safest for all weight-bearing exercises. And the action provides better postural position for your shoulders to have a stronger starting point. All of this is especially important for any pressing and pulling you do. Pull with your elbows on rowing motions. If you think about driving your elbows back instead of just pulling with your hands and arms, it will help you to have your shoulders in the correct position as well as work your lats and rhomboids more. Don't pull your elbows too far back in your rows. I know you want to get the best contraction in your muscles of your upper back, but I want you to understand that once your elbows pass a certain point, your shoulders can cave inwards and that tension can diminish where you want it and ends up migrating right to your shoulder joints. If you do this repeatedly, it's reinforcing bad movement patterns, poor posture, and causes breakdown at the joint capsule. So I want you to think about spreading your shoulders wide instead of just pulling your arms back as far as you can. This will give you a stronger back and healthier shoulders. Bend the bar through irradiation. When you're using two hands to lift a bar or kettlebell, don't just grab and lift because you're missing out on accessing your full strength potential. Instead, once you grab the bar, create tension in your midsection by bracing your abdominals while in a neutral spine and pelvis, then irradiate that tension outward from your center to your extremities. This provides the extra juice to your central nervous system to amplify your strength. It also helps to fire the muscles that stabilize and protect your spine. In addition, the action of bending the bar helps your rotator cuff to pack itself, which helps to give you more stability to lift with maximum strength. And lastly, this process of irradiation will help preserve the joints in your extremities, such as your wrists, elbows, knees, and ankles. A thumbless grip on military presses and vertical pulls. If you're experiencing excess tension in your wrists, elbows, and shoulders, try using this hook grip by not wrapping your thumb around the bar. It can help reduce the stress in those areas. Corkscrew your feet into the floor when lifting. Power generates from the ground up, so when you lock all four corners of your feet into the floor when you lift, you increase both your stability and your power. Forcefully exhale to better contract your abs. During an abdominal exercise or any exercise that requires more core stabilization, push the air out of your lungs while squeezing your abs tight. This increases stability at your midsection to give a solid platform for greater strength. Keep your head in neutral. Unless you're specifically trying to work your neck, keep it in a neutral position in all other exercises. That means the back of your head is aligned with your spine. Otherwise, you may be creating excess stress on the disc of your cervical spine and creating or reinforcing poor recruitment patterns. And there's a good chance that you aren't aware that you already have picked up this habit. So as a good practice during your exercise, focus on keeping your head and chin in a neutral position because it supports better spinal alignment and stability from the top down. And it helps develop the right recruitment patterns and optimal output from your central nervous system. A neutral spine and pelvis. When you're looking to build spinal stability, you must first have the correct alignment in your spine and pelvis. To help you find it before you start any exercise, place 2 fingers on your breastbone and with the other hand place 2 fingers down on your pubic bone. Next, inhale and then on the exhale, bring those 2 points in alignment so that you are stacked. And you'll know that you are when you feel a slight increase in abdominal tension. And from there, you will be in the best position to exert yourself in exercise. Brace. Bracing your core is helpful during most exercises that you exert force through your extremities, but especially where your lower back is being put under stress. So take a deep diaphragmatic breath in and then exhale as you tense up your abs. Ideally, you should feel a 360 degrees of pressure around your midsection. Create focused tension. Too many people rely on external weight to make their muscles work, but they are missing the boat to better results. In order to maximize every repetition you do, you get to create the internal tension in your working muscle to achieve the maximal recruitment so you can be your strongest and most powerful. Watch yourself in a mirror or video record yourself as you perform the exercise. Oftentimes, we may know the correct way to do something in our minds, but until you see yourself do it, you may not be aware that you're doing it wrong. So it's easier to see that your posture is wrong than to try to be aware of your body enough to know it's wrong. A rounded arch back is something that I see that happens a lot with deadlifts, and especially when people are trying to lift more weight than they can actually handle. So what that does is it puts more stress, again, in the vertebrae, on the disc, and it makes you weaker. So I'm going to show you what I typically see, and you might recognize it. As I squat down, I go to pick up that weight with a rounded spine. Thankfully, I didn't hurt myself on that rep because the weight is light enough, but I really cringe when I see people round their spine as they go down or up with the weight. So proper form, you'll see I'm in a neutral spine. Everything's in alignment from the back of my head to my sacrum. And as I stand up, everything moves together at the same rate. And then I lower back down. And that's how you do it. The heels lifting off the ground during a squat is another common mistake that I see in form. This puts a lot of pressure on the balls of your foot, the knees, and the hip flexors. And as you come up, it's all quads. So to keep the weight in your heels, that's going to help you to get more access out of your thighs and your glutes. So you notice as I come down, I'm keeping my heels on the ground, and then I drive up from my heels. So think about having all 4 corners of your feet on the ground as you're going down into the squat and driving up. And that's going to help to build the strength in your thighs and your glutes. Otherwise, if you press off the ball of the foot, that's going to stress your knee and your hip flexors, and at some point something's going to break down. Not stabilizing your spine during squats is not only dangerous, but it's also ineffective in how you want to build strength. So I'm going to show you some of the mistakes that I see and how that spine might look, and then I'm going to show you how it should look. Now, when you do have that stable spine, it's going to help you to have more power through the movement. So what I see as people go down is they might start rounding their back in flexion and then try to lift in that position, or they might have a really hyper extension in their low back. As they go to stand up, they get extension in their spine before they start moving from their hips. So that spine and hips should start moving at the same exact time, and that will also help you to keep a neutral spine through the movement. Pushing off your toes during a lunge adds stress to your knee and your hip flexor, and it takes away from you actually developing your glutes. So what I want to do is show you what I typically see in that lunge. It happens in that front foot, whereas they're going down deeper into the lunge, that heel lifts off the ground. So instead, I want you to really lock that foot down. Make sure you have all four corners of your foot locked into the ground, lower down, and drive off of that heel, and that will support you engaging your glutes. Leaning too far back in a lunge can also put too much weight on the back leg and not allow you to really load the front leg. So you don't have to stand straight up when you do a lunge. So it looks like this. Typically when I see people trying to lunge properly and they're trying to stay straight up, but that, again, that puts a lot of stress on that back leg. So if you need to, feel free to hinge a little bit at the hips. So you're going to anteriorly rotate your pelvis as you go down. And that allows me to get better load onto that front leg and that front glute as I stand back up. Now, if you're doing a lunge and your knee is collapsing inwards, that's going to put a lot of stress on the inside of the knee. So it looks a little bit like this. As people are going down, that knee comes in, and you see it's on the inside of the big toe. And as you stand up, there's a lot of stress that goes right there. So instead, do your best to track your kneecap in line with your second big toe and between your little toe as you go down. Make sure that it's very stable, and that's going to help your hips to be a lot stronger. Getting too much of an arch in your low back when you're doing a shoulder press is going to put a lot of stress in the disc of that low back, and it's also not going to support you in having the most amount of strength. So what I typically see in this poor form is as people are extending up, they might arch up to give them the illusion that they're extending behind their body with their arms, or they might start in that position and try to press from there. This is not a good resting position. So as I was mentioning earlier, you want to be able to stack your breastbone over your pubic bone, stack your rib cage on top of your hips. That's going to give you the best support from your abdominals, and that's going to give you more strength when you press from your shoulder. So it's going to look more like this. Right now I'm stacked with my rib cage, pressing up, and then coming down. When you shoulder press, if you're starting with rounded shoulders, this is called protraction, it's putting a lot of stress on the joint and a lot of tension on those muscles in the back there. So what you want to do is when you start off in that shoulder press, spread your shoulders. What I don't want to see is this, pressing from there. Instead, bring those shoulder blades back into a packed position and then press up. And pull them back into that position as well. A common mistake that I see people make with a shoulder press is that they confuse push presses with strict presses. Now, a strict press means that your body is staying as still as possible, so it's going to look like this as I press up and I pull back down. I'm not getting any assistance from my lower body. A push press is getting a little bit of a dip in the knees and exploding up. And that's getting that assistance from the ground up and working a little bit more on power. So be sure that you're clear on your objectives with your shoulder press and what you're trying to achieve. When you're doing planks, your body needs to be in alignment from your head to the back of your heels. And one of the form breaks that I see is a rounded upper back. So I'm going to show you what I typically see, and you might recognize it when people are doing planks, is they push their shoulders forward and they round their upper back. But instead, what I want you to do is bring your shoulder blades together, and that way you have a straight line from the back of your head all the way to your heels. Going along with that upper back being rounded, another common mistake that I see is that lower back also can arch, or it could round the opposite way. So we want to keep that neutral spine and pelvis. So the shoulder blades are squeezed together, my abs are tight, and I'm keeping the neutral spine and pelvis with a slight posterior pelvic tilt that helps keep that lower back in alignment. Another thing to think about when you're doing the plank is the position of your elbows. And what I see happen a lot is that people's elbows tend to go too far back and it's not underneath their shoulders. So when they're planking, it really puts your shoulders in a protracted position, putting a lot more stress, unneeded stress into your shoulders. So keep those elbows directly underneath your shoulders, and that's going to give you much more support. Grabbing the dumbbell handle off center puts a lot of unneeded stress at your wrists and elbows and shoulders. So when you grab the dumbbell, before you lie back, make sure you grab the center, and that's going to give you better balance. And instead of worrying about stabilizing more, just focus on building your chest. Another common mistake that I see when people grab a dumbbell and they hold it and doing the presses is that their wrist breaks. They end up going into this extension in their wrist, and what that's doing is it's putting a lot of stress there, and it's taking away from your chest, is what you're trying to build. So do your best to keep a neutral wrist. The back of your hand is flush with the back of your wrist, and that will give you better push. Protracting your shoulders forward when you're doing a press is actually taking the stress off of your chest and putting it onto your shoulders. So it's a common thing that I see, and I'm going to show you what that looks like and how to fix it. So when you have the dumbbells up above, I want you to notice that my shoulders are pushed up, and as I'm pressing, I'm pushing my shoulders up off of the bench. This is what you don't want to do. Instead, I want you to pinch those shoulder blades down, keep them there, lock in. As you go down and up, you're going to keep those shoulder blades together and just straighten your elbow instead of pushing your shoulders off the bench. That will give you more of the result that you want. Now, I know this might offend some people, CrossFitters, but kipping and jerking is not a real pull-up. It has to be done from a dead hang at the bottom. So what I see in those pull-ups is a little bit of a swing action, and they're pulling. They're using that momentum to come up. But really, that's just momentum. That's not really actually building the strength in the back. So instead, it should be very strict, pulling, elbows out wide, chest is up high, and then all the way down at the bottom. Now, if during a pull-up you're trying to pull with your arms instead of your back, you're missing out on a huge opportunity to build upper body strength. And I'll see a lot of people use all of this. So it's not really going to look a whole lot different, but if I were to try to pull with my arms, it would kind of look like this. And you'll notice that I'm not really getting very high in that pull-up. So instead, I'm going to really focus on driving my elbows out wide so that I can access my lats. So it's going to look a little bit more like this. And when I do this, I really focus on driving my elbows down and out, and that gives me the best contraction through the lats. And for a complete pull-up, it means you have to go all the way down before you start pulling back up. And it's a common mistake that I see in a lot of people. So when they're going down into the pull-up, they might stop short because they're afraid if they go any deeper, they're not going to be able to come back up. So they do these half reps or quarter reps. I want you to go all the way down, full extension of the elbows, and then pull. Dead hang, pull. That's a full range of motion pull-up. If you're doing a pull-up and you're not really pulling your chest all the way up through the bar, then you're not going to get the most effect. So what I want to do is show you what I typically see at the top of the motion. When people are pulling up, they tend to protract those shoulders and they round in their upper back before they actually get to the top. But instead, I really want you to imagine that you're driving your chest through the bar at the top, every rep, just like that. And that's going to give you a really strong contraction in your back. Thanks for checking out my guide on identifying bad form. I hope you found it helpful and can use these tips and techniques in your own practice. In case you'd like to revisit anything, I've included link timestamps in the description below, along with links to my site, blog, and social channels, where you can access more content and learn about my training programs. Remember, the only way to be an athlete for life is by preventing injury and being committed and consistent. You can't sustain your regular workouts if you get hurt or aren't performing at your highest level. So as always, I encourage you to challenge yourself, but to do so as safely as possible.